All right. We are live. Share this really quickly. Allowing people to join. Okay. Excuse the setup and my husband had this whole thing set up for his podcast when I got here, and I didn't want to move any of it or do anything. So I just left it and kind of had to reposition everything. So, okay. So let me go back here. All right, so welcome today as we get into this topic. Excuse me over the next couple weeks. It's a little crazy. My son gets married in 12 days, my second son. So it's shocking that it's here already. Um, so yeah, needless to say, I really haven't had to do that much. I mean, he's had to pay for a lot of it and do that, but as far as like planning it, Liz has done all of that, and she pretty much just wants me to show up and enjoy it, and that's great. I know it will be different when I have daughters that are getting married. So since I've had two sons in a row get married, I know I've been very spoiled by the lack of planning that I've really had to do. And I pretty much just have to make sure that everyone has the right dresses and shoes and, socks and then hairstyles. So I got to figure out some hairstyles. I'm thinking I might wear my hair down for that. I don't know yet. That's actually my favorite way to wear it. So if you have any ideas for mother of the groom hairstyles that are classy, please let me know. I actually ordered some of those rhinestone hair clips that are making a comeback. I figured my hair would look good with those, but yeah, lots of things going on over the next couple of weeks. We actually had a one of our friends who's like family who is in Jason's wedding fly in today. So he is now at our house. So it's getting real. It's getting real, you guys. It's coming up next week, next Saturday, and I'll definitely be live. It's going to be live stream, so I'll be sharing that if anyone wants to tune in or watch. It'll be a interpreted wedding, so it'll be bilingual. So if you have Spanish friends that want to listen or join in, whatever. So, anyways, this has kind of been on my mind a little bit since we're going into this wedding, and since I have a lot of daughters myself. So I wanted to talk today about raising girls who know their worth. We live in a day and an age where it's really tough to find a good man. And you're like, I thought you were talking about girls. I am, but this all goes together. And part of our girls knowing their worth is that this will be a protection, if you want to call it that, in some sorts of them ending up with a bad guy. Now, I know some of you have no idea that have found yourselves in horrible situations. You had no idea before you got married. There was no warning signs. You thought everything was kosher and everything was great, or maybe pressure got to him and it kind of changed who he was. I don't know. I know there are exceptions to the rule, but there also are red flags that you can pick up on. And also just teaching our daughters to know how precious they are to God, how important they are to God. That goes a long way in them not ending up with just a total loser that's going to abuse them, abuse their children, so on and so forth. So it's really hard to find a good man, someone who's going to love, protect, and cherish our daughters. We want to raise strong women who know that they are worth waiting for, protecting, and loving. So how do we do this in today's day and age? How do we raise girls who, one, aren't full of themselves, but two, they have a good balance of self-confidence and knowing their worth? So this is something that's very important to me because I do think that my mom and my dad did a really good job in raising daughters, because they also had a lot of daughters. I have 6 daughters. My mom and dad had 4. There was 5 of us total, 1 boy and 4 girls. And I think they did a really good job of instilling self-confidence without raising, prideful, arrogant girls. Like, we knew that God loved us, and we knew that our parents loved us, and thus we knew we were worth something. As human beings, every human being is worth something, especially when they come into this life. And God sees everyone that he creates and loves them and wants the best for them. So, number one, though, I think one of the reasons for me personally that I did have high standards when it came to who I was going to date or who I was going to marry is because I had a very good relationship with my dad. So I cannot stress enough, number one, that your girl's relationship with their dad, it needs to be the number one in their lives as far as opposite gender, right? So, and I do think too, and I'm not talking about sons today and how to raise good sons, but I do think that the mother-son relationship is very important too. And there's some things as moms with adult sons, there are ways that we can really get our sons' hearts and not be controlling, but yet still be an influence in their life, as they grow up. But specifically for girls, the relationship with their dad is so important. And I do believe that dads need to really build up their daughter with words. Words are super important. Whoever said sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me was lying. That's not true. It's a stupid saying. Words do hurt. Words have the power to build or the power to destroy. I often think of the verse of talking about a wise woman buildeth her home, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. I think we can do that with words as well. We can build our husband with words, or we can tear him down. We can build our children with words, or we can tear them down with our words. Words are very important. So dads definitely need to build her with their words. I know one thing for us is that from the time that we've had little girls, and it's been 20 years now, over 2 decades that we've had little girls, I would get them ready, get them dressed, do their hair, get them all pretty, and have them go like twirl in their pretty dresses for their dad, like every Sunday before we leave. And he would just, oh, look at that pretty girl. Look at her. She's beautiful. And our girls grew up knowing that their dad thought they were beautiful. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The girls need to know that their dad thinks they're pretty. They need to know that their mom thinks they're pretty. And it's not just that, and we'll touch on it a little bit. It's not all about looks. It's not all about telling them they're beautiful or pretty. It's about just building them up in general, whether that's looks, whether that's skills, whether that's things that they accomplish in life. The dad needs to be number one when it comes to building up their daughters. So during today, if you have any questions too, when it comes to the whole relationship with girls and dads and daughters and moms and daughters, go ahead and leave it in the chat as well, if you have any questions that you want to ask. So for us, another thing that we've really tried to do when it comes to my husband and our girls is, just be around, spend time with her. When they were real little, we did daddy-daughter dates. Whenever they had a birthday, I would get them all prettied up and they would go out with their dad for their birthday. One thing that I'm not super fond about, but we've kind of just fallen into the tradition of doing it because I don't see the fairness in this, is that when they're seniors, my husband is the one who takes them on their senior trip. That's kind of our gift to them, and they get to choose wherever they go. So Tommy wanted to go to Arizona. My husband took him there. Jace wanted to do Louisiana. My husband took him there. And then Abigail wanted to do Colorado. So a couple of years ago, they went to Colorado. And now this year it was Chloe's turn, and she wanted to do Montana. So they just got back from their trip to Montana. Allison graduates, I think, in 2 years, and she said that, or 3 years. And she's already said that she wants to go to the Redwoods in California. So she's already picked her place that she wants to go. But it's just a really good time that they have with dad. Now, I will say, since he has that, I've kind of started my own thing where before they get married, I go on a trip with them. So last year, Abigail and I went to London. And I believe Chloe hopefully next year in 2026. It's about every other year I want to try this. In 2026, I want to go somewhere with Chloe. So, that's kind of my thing I do. But we try to make sure that we spend one-on-one time. And my husband especially tries to make sure that he spends one-on-one time with our daughters. Dad needs to be her biggest cheerleader, more so even than mom, more than any of her friends, more than anyone else in her life. Dad needs to be her biggest cheerleader. So when it comes to dating with our daughters, how do we kind of navigate that? We have a good system now. First of all, Dad is always the first one to know. He's the first one to be involved. He's the first one that gets called by the guy that's interested. Everything gets run by Dad. Now, my husband is not this big, scary guy, and he's actually pretty easy to talk to. And he's a big softie when it comes to his girls. So, if a guy has just I guess the bravery to talk to my husband will run it by our daughters. And if they're interested, they'll say, yes, I'm interested in talking. If they're not, they'll say, no, I'm not really interested in talking at this time. And then he relays that conversation back to them. But we are always involved in from the start to the finish of the dating relationship. Many of you know we do chaperone dating. So, but when it comes to just being this uber controlling force, we're not. And there's no listening on phone calls. There's no reading text messages. We do chaperone dating. And we want to be involved in every step, like, asking to talk and then asking to officially become boyfriend, girlfriend, saying I love you, and then asking for permission to ask for marriage. So those are kind of the steps that we do in our household. But Dad's right there for all of it, and then oftentimes the guy has to win over Dad more so even than my daughters. It's all a competition to win Dad over. Okay. So it also happens organically, there's no forcing things, whatever. So that's kind of how we navigate the father-daughter, relationship during the dating years. But it's very much under our umbrella of protection, but we also let them adult, if that makes sense. We're not looking over their shoulder. There has to come a time when we've just got to put some faith and trust in our children. And we can't be reading every text message they sent. They have to be, responsible enough to not give in temptation of sending something they shouldn't, saying something they shouldn't. We have to let them adult. So that's kind of what we do. They're under umbrella, but we're not hovering, if that makes sense. So what about mom's relationships with our daughters? So that's kind of Dad's relationship. Well, mom's relationship with daughters, definitely watch your words when it comes to your daughters. Watch your words because they do want our approval more than we realize. And words, like I said, are very, very powerful. Someone go ahead and leave a comment in the chat because I have like almost 15 people watching, but no one's saying anything. So it makes me think you're just all haters that are watching, just like watching, waiting for me to slip up, waiting for me to say something that they can preach against again. So definitely let me know you're here if you're not a hater. So let me know where some of my longtime listeners are if you want to leave a comment. But yeah, our relationship with our daughters, they do want our approval more than we realize. I mean, think about it. All of us want a good relationship with our mom. All of us want a good relationship with our dad. There's something in us. There's a natural desire in us to want to be close to our parents. So your daughters do want to be close to you. And we need to, as moms, we need to teach them skills, right? So if you just read Proverbs 31 with your daughters, you're going to go through there and you're going to find out that she was a woman of many skills. She was a very strong woman, physically, yes, but also mentally, she was smart. She was a businesswoman. as many as some want to try to make it seem like she just never left her home, that's just not true. When you read Proverbs 31, she was out doing business. She was out planting a vineyard and overseeing that. She was doing a lot of things. Her husband was well known in the gates, so it means that people knew of her in her community, right? So she was out doing a lot more than just never leaving her home. She was overseeing her home. Yes, she was overseeing all the different facets and everything of the home, but she was also out doing other things. So I firmly believe that girls should learn some skills, whether that's musical skills, whether that's crafting skills, whether that's book smarts, whether that is baking skills, whether that is something that they can use after they're married as maybe a means of extra income, fun income. I see nothing wrong with girls learning, like doing online school, furthering their education when they're still not married. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Hey, Claudette, thank you for leaving a comment. Thank you for saying something. Yes, it's weird that there's no comments coming through. Usually there's a lot more than this, especially when there's over a dozen people watching. So, but yeah, teach them that their worth is in Christ, not with what some boy thinks. So, and this goes along. This is one of the things that I do. This is raising a good daughter, thanks, Claudette. Raising a daughter takes a lot more. Raising children, let's just say that. Raising children is more than a checklist of rules and just spanking them every day, okay? If you need to do that. It's more than just physical discipline. Raising a good child is going to take day in and day out communication, training, teaching. And one thing I do with my girls is we're always talking. We're always in communication, life lessons with mom, and I've told my girls about some very big red flags when it comes to guys. Now, obviously, I'm a little more concerned with whom my girls marry than my boys, because I know my boys are good men. I know they're not abusive. I know they don't have tempers, all that stuff. Okay. I know they're going to be in control of themselves. But with my girls, we're literally giving our girl over to someone maybe we don't know very well, or, and so that's a little bit more frightening, especially when it comes to daddy-daughter things. That's very frightening. And so I've been teaching them some characteristics, some red flags to watch for in a good guy versus a bad guy. I've been training them since they were little. Number one, how does he treat his mom? How does he treat his sisters? Is he constantly putting his mom down? Does he talk down to his mom? I can tell you, even though my sons definitely could beat me up if they wanted to, they could overpower me physically. That doesn't mean that they just disrespect me and demean me and talk down to me. My boys have never, once they got to a certain age, that kind of ceased, right? And it should cease. So just watch. How does he treat his mom? How does he treat women in general? Does he have a very low opinion of women? Does he see women as something that's going to be his property, something that's like a pet, something that he can just use and abuse because he's the man and he's thumping his chest and he's in charge, which I agree in biblical authority. I agree with all of that. But what is his attitude regarding women? That is a big, big, big thing to watch for. Does he have a temper? Does he hit things when he's mad? Does he throw things when he's mad? Does he punch things when he's mad? Does he kick things when he's mad? Watch him when he plays sports. I've always said that sports is like a great indicator of if someone's able to keep their temper in check. And I've often seen that those who are very, very, very short-tempered on the basketball court, on the football field, on the soccer field, they oftentimes have a lot of issues that they respond to with anger, even in everyday situations. So actually, sports are really good at revealing character. And I've often said that. They reveal your attitude. They reveal if you have a temper. They reveal how you act under pressure. They reveal how you act sometimes when you're treated unfairly. Maybe you get an elbow in the face or you're pushed or you're, kicked or whatever it is. It shows a lot about you. So sports actually brings out that character. Hey, Aaron. Does he respect boundaries or does he push boundaries? And when I say this, I'm talking specifically about boundaries when you're dating. So if you have some physical boundaries in place, we're not going to hold hands till we're engaged. We're not going to hold hands till we're married. We're not going to kiss until we're married. We're not going to hug until we're married. Or we're not going to hug until we get engaged. I personally don't see anything wrong with asking someone to marry you and then giving them a hug, especially if the whole family's watching. The whole point in not touching someone is to avoid fornication, right? It's to avoid anything that could lead up to that. So obviously there's going to be some things. I've told my daughters this. If you would not do it, if you think it's weird for mom, if you look at me, I'm married to dad. If you think something would be weird for me to do to another man, then you don't need to do that with who you're dating. If you think it's weird, would it be weird if I went and kissed a man on a cheek? Yeah, it would be. So don't do that when you're dating. Would it be weird if I held another man's hand? Yeah, that would be weird. So probably good to avoid that. Would it be weird if I gave someone a hug? Now, I will say there have been situations where I've given someone of the opposite gender a hug. That's, in situations where it's everyone together, maybe it's a family member and I haven't seen them for a long time, give them a hug. There are different situations where that's totally platonic and friendly, whatever. But if that's kind of the guideline that I give my girls. If you think it would be weird to see mom do something with another married man, then you don't need to be doing that when you're dating because you're not married yet. So, and we avoid things that could lead to fornication, right? And we as married people avoid things that could lead to adultery. So you don't kiss someone else is not your husband. You don't hold hands with someone else. You don't do anything, any type of romantic touch to someone that's not your husband, basically. So if you have a guy and you're dating a guy that's constantly pushing that, seeing what he can get away with, he wants to hold your hand, and then that's not good enough. So then he wants to kiss you, and then that's not good enough. So then he wants to make out, and then he's touching you everywhere. If he's constantly pushing boundaries, that's a big red flag. If you cannot control your vessel while you're dating, it's a good indication that you're not going to be able to control your vessel after you're dating or after you're married, I'm sorry, because even after you're married, there's going to be different seasons that you go through where you're going to have to be in control of your vessel. There's going to be postpartum and there's going to be dry seasons and there's going to be seasons of sickness. And you can't just use an excuse, well, we went through 6 weeks postpartum, so I just couldn't control myself. So I just went out and, it's your fault for having a baby or whatever. No, that's not how that works. So you have to be in control of your vessel, and the dating period is a good way to test that. So if you're with someone that is constantly pushing boundaries, it's a big red flag. Also, how is his relationship with authority in general? How is he towards his pastor? How is he towards his boss at work? How is he towards the police when he gets pulled over for a speeding? How is he towards authority in general? That's a good indication. Because if a man is not willing to put himself under or respect authority, there might come a time in his life where the authority will be forced to keep him in line. Okay, so you just really watch to how he responds to authority. That's a big red flag. If he is very against all forms of authority, if he's just rogue on every issue, he doesn't obey the speeding law because, well, it's stupid that there's laws in place anyways. I'm not going to wear my seatbelt because that's stupid. They don't have the right to tell me to wear a seatbelt. Just, stuff like that. He just has a rebellious nature overall. That could potentially show some character flaws in him. So watch how he treats those who can do nothing for him. This would include waitresses, employees at stores, random people he runs into, just someone, driving. Watch who he treats, watch how he treats people and how he interacts with people who can do nothing for him in return. That's a big indication of character flaws. Does he admire you for your looks or for who you are as a person? Because looks are going to change over the years. Beauty is going to fade. And what is he attracted to? Is he only attracted to, um, does he make comments about your figure? Does he, want you to stay 125 pounds all, throughout your entire life? Without taking into consideration that he also wants you to have a lot of children. So your body is going to be changing a lot, as you bear children, as you nurse children, and you're going to go through a lot of changes. So what is he attracted to? That's something to consider. How is his relationship with God? And obviously, this should be number one on the list. Is he close to the Lord? Is he only close to the Lord when he is being forced to, when he's in a Christian school, when he's in a Bible college, or does he willingly choose to be close to God, even when no one's telling him to, when he's on his own? That's something to look for. And then does he have standards and convictions of his own? Or is he only adapting to the atmosphere that he's around? So that's something to watch for as well. So those are all tips that I've given my girls, told my girls about. There's been some relationships maybe, through the years where, and we're not even the type of people that are like, oh, that's a red flag, like constantly looking for red flags. No, these are just things that will pop up now and then. And your daughter, has to decide what she's willing to put up with and what she's not. Because at the end of the day, we're all flawed human beings. McMurtry's aren't perfect. Your family's not perfect. None of us are perfect. But there are some consistencies in different families. And I have found with almost all of my adult kids now, married or in relationships, I have found that the family really does play into dynamics. And it really does. You can either have a lot of baggage from the family you were raised in, or you can have a lot of good things from the family that you were raised in. And the ones that my kids have been very compatible with are ones that had very similar upbringings to them, very similar family homes and family lives, and mom and dad still married, and good family structure. Those are the ones that my kids are most compatible with. That's not to say that you can't date someone or marry someone that has completely different vast circumstances. Maybe they weren't raised in a Christian home, but I have found for our family, the ones that my kids mesh with the best or meld with the best, they do have similar upbringings or similar family lives. So, and it really provides a very good foundation for a marriage. Marriage is hard. It doesn't matter who you are, who you marry. You have two different people coming together from entirely different backgrounds, and it's going to be a lot of work, right? But I've noticed that the foundation is very, very good for a marriage that's built on similar upbringings and similar things like that. So, how do we give self-confidence to our daughters, or raise them being self-confident without raising proud, arrogant daughters? And we do need to have a good balance of love and correction. Okay, there definitely needs to be both. We don't want to raise spoiled, indulgent children who are lazy and, have never experienced a hardship in their life. We don't want to raise children like that, but we also don't want to raise children who are bitter or angry at the way that they were raised. So it is a good balance of love and correction. Let them know that some things are unchangeable in their life, such as your love for them. And I think love, I really do think the two biggest things in a Christian home that ends up producing bitter, angry children that just walk away from Christianity in a whole, I do think more and more and more, the more that I see, the more that I hear, the more that I observe, just being in the ministry, is number one, there's a lot of hypocrisy in the home. So people are only doing things in their life because they're trying to fit a mold, or they want people to think a certain way. So they might be one way at church, but then when they get home, they're a completely different way. So hypocrisy in the home is number one, or not even hypocrisy, but the motive behind their beliefs. Why do I believe that a lady should dress like a lady? Is it because my church is that's what it pushes? Or I want people to think I'm this way because I'm in this church or whatever. And I've noticed a lot of families, they try to meld to whatever atmosphere or whatever church they're in. And then they're constantly jumping around all these churches and they're just confusing their kids. So one day we're only wearing skirts. The next day, bikinis on the beach are fine. One day we're wearing head coverings, which we've never done, but I've seen some families do this. One day we're wearing head coverings. The next we are listening to heavy metal rock and wearing, Metallica t-shirts. Like it just doesn't make sense. And the kids are confused. They don't know what you believe. And oftentimes it's because you're just kind of melding what you believe around what group you're around. So get some core beliefs and just stick with those. So hypocrisy in the home or the motive behind doing what you're doing is the biggest thing. And then a lack of love. There's a huge lack of love in a lot of even Christian homes. And this produces very embittered children who are desperate for their parents' love, but it's just not there. So for my kids, there are some unchangeable things, such as I will always love you. And I might not agree with every choice you make, but I will always love you. Like that's not going to change. And then, don't constantly bring up past mistakes with your kids. Just move on, move on from those things. And then model to her what a woman of worth looks like. You're going to be her first example of a Proverbs 31 woman. So she needs to see it in your home. Okay. Just first of all, one thing with my girls from the time they're super, super teeny, I try to just get through to them how much they mean to God, how much they mean to Jesus, how Jesus gave his life for you. You are special to him. You are precious. I'm so glad you're mine. I'm so glad God put you in my belly. Literally from the time they were born, I'm telling them this. Who made you special? God. Who made you pretty? God. Who loves you even more than mommy does? God. And I want this to get in their heart and their head that they are they're very high value to the Lord and very high value to God. And, I teach my girls to recognize that their purity is something as special and priceless, and it's definitely worth the wait. Now, I've heard a lot of girls that have slammed purity culture, and oftentimes I've heard this a couple different times. They were taught that purity is special and purity is priceless. And then they went on to, when they were a teenager, a young adult, they were molested or raped, or they had that purity taken from them. And they said because they had been taught it was purity, it was priceless and a great thing, they had so much guilt and so much just never ending guilt because of that. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that purity culture is bad. I think the way that it was probably most likely handled after the abuse happened is where the problem lies. I have never experienced this myself. I've never had any of my daughters experience this. I've just heard stories from other people. But when something like that is taken from you in a way where it was literally stolen, that is not your fault. That does not make you a horrible person. That does not make you a bad person. The guilt does not lie on you. It lies on the person who abused you. So if that has happened to you, I just beg that you don't carry that around with you for the rest of your life. That is definitely a burden you need to give over to the Lord. I would say if it ever does happen to you, please get help from the correct authorities. Go to the correct authorities. The reason for the government is to punish evildoers. And if something like that has happened to you, someone was very evil that did it to you, and they need to be punished to the full extent of the law. So please don't keep that to yourself. Please don't, just blame yourself. When you are a victim of a violent crime, and that could be rape, that could be incest, that could be molestation, that could be your husband is abusing you in the home. When you are a victim of a violent crime, it is not your fault. And please seek help. And that does not lower your worth as a woman. at all. It was not your fault that was taken from you. That was the abuser's fault, and all of the guilt lies on him. So please don't ever feel that way. But for my girls, I am teaching them that this is something that is a gift to your future spouse, right? This is a gift. This is something that you can give him one day, and it is special, and it is good, and it's right to save that for him. Teach your daughters to realize that she's worth being cherished by her future spouse. She's worth it. And she's worth being cherished by her dad and her mom, and she's also worth being cherished by her future spouse, and teach her not to settle for anything less. And that's what I'm doing with my girls. Teach her that a life of serving others, it does have worth, and point to examples in the Bible. There's lots of women in the Bible who lived a life of service. You've got Mary and Martha, you've got Sarah, basically. You've got just a lot of different stories in the Bible about women who use their life in service of others. The Proverbs 31 woman, you see all the things that she was doing. She was serving her husband and her children and running her household. And that was something, a virtuous woman who can find, for her price is far above rubies. It's something that's priceless. So teach your daughters that it is not a life wasted to serve your husband and serve in your local church and serve your children. That's not a life wasted. That's a life that brings glory to God. That's a life that will have an impact on future generations, because you took the time to bring up your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. So that's going to have an impact. Teach her what vain pursuits look like. Vain pursuits could be things that are frivolous, things that we don't need to spend our time. It could be something as little as too much time on social media. It could be spending too much money on nails or makeup, or those things. I have nails and I wear makeup. Those things are not inherently evil in and of themselves. It's how much priority we put on those things. Are we overemphasizing physical looks, but we're avoiding talking about developing the inner man, right? Developing the fruits of the spirit. Are we focusing more on outward beauty, but not focusing enough on who we are as a person? So you definitely want to have a balance of both. It's okay to have good hygiene. It's okay to do your hair. It's okay to wear makeup. It's okay to have pretty nails. It's okay to have pretty earrings and cute clothes. But along with those things, you also need to work on gentleness, goodness, faith, temperance, meekness, love. All these things, these are the outside stuff. It's just a little frivolous adornment, but it's the inside stuff that matters, right? It's how we react to life around us, how we react to different situations. That's what really matters. Vain pursuits could be anything that takes our mind and heart off of the Lord. It could be things that we're spending too much time on, too much money on, whatever. And then show her what a good marriage looks like. Love her dad and love him well. When you and your husband have a good relationship, that is going to give your kids confidence. They're not going to be worried about you divorcing or separating or any of that. They're going to be confident in your love for each other. And that's going to also help them have confidence when it comes to having relationships with people eventually. They're not going to be just terrified of marriage. If they saw that their parents had a good marriage, they're more likely to also want that themselves. And then show her what doing things the right way looks like. Now, I know a lot of you that watch my show, you come from maybe a different background than I do, and I completely understand that. But from the time that you get saved, you can change the direction that your family goes. And it's still possible to raise good kids. It's still possible to raise kids who love the Lord and who want to keep doing this after they get married and after they've left the house. That's still possible. Don't let preachers fool you into thinking that it's just the roll of a dice. And, well, I don't know how that happened. Honestly, I will put this disclaimer out there. The more kids that I raise, the more I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So yes, I understand that seasoned parents often say, by the grace of God, by the grace of God, I raised good kids. And I do think that is the right attitude to have, because we're all learning and we're all growing, and there's always areas of improvement. But also, if you have a good product and the more kids that you raise, you kind of see, okay, this thing is kind of working, then keep doing what you're doing, And like I said, I think the two biggest killers in a home is hypocrisy and a lack of love. So if you leave those two things out of your home, chances are your kids are going to like you. They're going to want a relationship with you. They're going to love the Lord. They're going to want to continue to raise their family in church. So I think sometimes we panic too much. And I know I did a lot when my kids were younger because you don't know, right? We only have one shot at this thing. What if I do something wrong? And believe me, you're going to do something wrong. We're all going to do something wrong. But I think at the end of the day, it's humility and just admitting when you mess up and then saying, okay, we need to do better in this area, seeing where you're going wrong and readjusting and then going from there. So I understand that a lot of you come from different backgrounds than I do, but that it's not all fruitless. It's not like completely impossible to raise good kids or completely impossible to have a good family. You can turn the course of your family for future generations. Get in a good church, listen to families that have raised good kids, follow and listen to the teaching of those who have good fruit if you want their outcome. If you're following someone who has bad fruit, you don't want that outcome, then don't listen to their advice. It's as simple as that. And then build your daughter up. Don't tear her down. And we kind of talked about this already with the words. Words are very powerful. You can really do a lot of damage to your daughter. I've always tried and I'm not perfect when it comes to this. Sometimes we have frustrating days and I'm just like, okay, I'm done. You need to go to sleep now. No more talking. I'm done. Like we've all had days like that. But I'll never forget what I heard a long time ago. And I don't even know who said it. They said, when you have little kids, especially like whoever's putting them to bed, mom, dad, whoever, their words are the last thing they're going to hear upon going to sleep. And their words are going to be the first thing they hear upon waking up. So I've really tried to give my kids a good experience going to bed and a good experience waking up. So when they go to bed, it's hugs, it's kisses. I love you. You're so special. We pray. Oftentimes when I put them to bed, I'll read them a story. We'll do a bedtime story. And then the first thing that they hear when they wake up is they come find me every morning. And it's, hi, baby, I love you. That's the first thing they hear. My babies know it. They crawl into bed with me most mornings and we cuddle a little bit. And that's what I want them to hear upon waking up is that, hey, baby, I love you. I'm so glad to see you. Good morning. I don't want them to wake up to yelling, screaming, insults, degrading, no, that's not, I want them to have pleasant memories of waking up and seeing mom smile and hearing I love you. So I've always tried to make that a priority with especially my babies. But even my 11-year-old, she cannot, I don't know if this is a good thing. She cannot go to sleep without giving me a hug and telling me, I love you, mom, and give me a kiss on the cheek. So one thing that she listens for is I oftentimes heat up my headache pillow in the microwave before I go to bed. I've been trying to do castor oil packs for my thyroid every night. And when she hears the microwave going, she knows I'm heating that up. So then she'll come and say goodnight and give me a hug and a kiss. So that's just really special to her. That's important to her. And she's 11 and she still needs that. So most of my older kids, we say goodnight, I love you, give each other hugs. My 15-year-old still does it, so it's one thing in our family that's important. Never call your daughter names. Never use profanity with your kids. That's a hard set rule. Christians should be different in this area. Christians shouldn't be using the world language. This is a hill I will die on. I do believe it, when you have profanity in the home, that is it's a very worldly environment. It makes me cringe if I'm in public and I hear that, but then to be in public and hearing a mom scream profanity at her kids breaks my heart. It really does. And that child is going to remember you screaming derogatory names and foul words at them. So please just don't do it. Get control of your tongue. If Christians could just have control of their tongue, the Bible has many verses talking about how hard it is to tame the tongue and how the tongue is full of deadly poison. And God had a lot of things to say about the tongue and the words that come out of our mouth. So I take that very seriously. And I don't think in a Christian home there should ever be a place for profanity, for calling names, for using derogatory language. So those are some things that you can use. And you're thinking, what does, not calling her names have to do with building self-confidence? Because do you like it when your husband calls you derogatory names? Does that give you much confidence as a wife? If your husband is constantly calling you things, you start that makes you feel about this big when that happens, when people call you things and put you down and call you names. That's not good for self-confidence building at all. So let's do better with our daughters. And then how do we protect our daughters from those who want to take advantage of them? Well, number one, you've got to realize that there is a time when you have to let them adult. We can't just keep them in our house forever. We can't keep them till they're 25, 30 and protect them and keep this in their little bubble. There is a time when you have to let them that adult. However, that being said, never stop being an influence in your kids' life. Definitely be there for them. If you have their heart, they're going to listen to you if you see an issue, if you have a concern and you need to bring it up. Chances are they're going to listen to you if they want to, if they care about your opinion, if they care about what you think. And newsflash, most kids do. If your kids don't, there's something that's been severed that needs to be fixed. You don't need to throw them to the wolves, but I also don't agree with being uber overprotective. There has to be a balance of being an influence, yet letting them still adult and make adult decisions, different things like that. Even for my adult kids, we've never enlisted a curfew. There's never been a need because they're adults and while they're still living in our home, they also kind of know our rules and our guidelines. And then even with my dating kids that are adults, they always have a sibling with or something. So I'm not really worried about it. So we kind of just let them live their life without having all these rules and restrictions in place. And there's never been an issue. So teach them how to set boundaries with people. And this is for your daughters. This comes down to just personal standards and things. If someone is wronging them, teach them good ways to confront that. And, there's lines sometimes that we need to set in our life with other people. That could be coworkers, that could be just church relationships with friends, different things like that. So, and then teach them what to do if someone doesn't listen to those boundaries. And that has already happened to my kids with different situations. And they got a crash course. And sometimes it wasn't pretty. It resulted in relationships that were broken, different things like that. But that is one way to keep your kids from being taken advantage of, is teach them to set boundaries and teach them what to do if those boundaries are overstepped. Teach them that they are precious. Their life is precious. And if they are ever in a situation where they need help, to get help. Teach them that the communication lines with you are always open, whether that is if they're in an awkward situation with another adult that they don't feel comfortable with. Tell them they need to tell you, they need to let you know. If anything, if they're ever violated in any way, teach them that they need to tell you and they need to know. Okay, I think I muted it. Let's see. I knew that would come on when. Please enter your remote access code. When I'm doing this, that's fun. Okay. Hopefully that's not going to go off. I don't want someone leaving a message and then them being on a live of leaving a message if they don't want the whole world to know, I'm sure. So, but yes, teach them that if they are ever in a situation, and this comes down to having trust with their dad. If they feel that they can trust their dad, then they're going to reach out to him. They're going to talk to you. If they feel that they can trust you with their heart, with their emotions, different things, they're going to reach out to you and they're going to talk to you about it. But definitely teach them that there are some things that are never okay. I'm going to have to unplug this. Just a second. I don't want her to leave a message and then. Okay. That should do it. Sorry about that. I always forget to unplug it before I start my lives. But yeah, teach her that there are some things that are never okay. When they're dating, physical, anything physical in anger is never okay. It's never okay for a guy to hit you. As much as some people try to gaslight you into thinking that, there's physical stuff that goes on in marriages, that's not a healthy relationship. That's not right. That's not good. So especially when they're dating, they need to tell you if anything physical ever happens, because that's a huge red flag. Teach them that marriage is until death do us part. So they have to be very, very careful about who they choose to marry. They have to be very careful about this. Now, that being said, I don't believe it's, okay to just put up with being punched in the face or slapped down, or, you having your life being put in danger, because I do believe that every life is precious. A woman's life is precious. Every life is precious. An unborn child's life is precious. And so if a woman is in fear of her life, then she needs to go to the correct people that can help her with that. She needs to get her to safety. She needs to get her kids to safety. But when it comes to your daughters, if they're dating someone and that becomes an issue, that's a huge red flag. And if it's that way when they're dating, it's going to be that way after marriage too. And it's probably going to escalate. So that for my girls is a definite deal breaker. No bueno. That's not going to happen. It's not going, that relationship is not going any further if anything like that takes place when they're dating. So those are some things that we do to kind of protect our daughters. We do have some definite no's when it comes to red flags that we will not ignore. And that is one of them, one of the biggest, obviously, because anyone can beat up a woman. Anyone can punch a woman. Men have the strength on us. I, just for fun, wanted to arm wrestle my husband the other day. And I was like, I knew it wasn't going to be much of a competition, and it wasn't. But once again, if you've ever wrestled with your husband just for fun, or you've ever arm wrestled with your husband just for fun, the sheer strength that men have. I believe in the differences between men and women. We are the weaker vessel. So anyone can beat up a woman. Anyone pretty much can. If you're a man, if you have testosterone, that doesn't mean, where am I going with that? But yeah, anyone, anyone can beat up a woman. Anyone can. And it takes a real man with strength, real strength, to not ever physically harm a woman. That's where I'm going with that. So men by name can beat up a woman, but men who have real strength never will lay a hand on a woman in anger. So teach them they have to be very, very careful. And my kids know that they have to be very careful with who they marry, because they know we've taught them it's till death do you part. So they don't take these things lightly, for sure. So what are some last tips when it comes to this? Love your daughters well. Find out their love language and then do it. I have many different girls with many different personalities, with many different love languages. And I've had to kind of figure out through the years which love language each girl has. And then, I can do things that make them feel loved, make them feel appreciated. Praise your daughters, let them know, thank you for helping out so much. I told Chloe after she was gone this week, I said, girl, I could not do what I do if you were not here. And obviously, I used to say the same about Abby too, until she kind of transitioned into another phase of life. And that sounds funny when you say that. That word has so many bad meanings. It's not a bad transition. When she's gone from being at home to where she's working in the daycare. There we go. And where she got her CDA and all this stuff. So she's in a different phase of life now. So she's not around home as much. She's living in our home, but she's living her own life as well. So then Chloe kind of had to step up. And now Chloe gets paid from me so I can teach piano. And, she kind of runs the home. And while I'm doing the things I do, I'm still overseeing everything, but she's doing a lot of it. And so then I know after Chloe eventually gets married and moves away, Allison will be older and she'll kind of step into that role. And it will just, all my kids are growing up at the same time as well. So we're all kind of going into different phases of our life. But I told Chloe, I said, girl, I could not do what I do. Like, I would have to put a lot of things on hold. And that's just the season of life I'm in. And that's why I tell younger mamas don't have too much on your plate. Your time will come when you'll have older kids and you can go branch off into different like activities and things that you want to do. But that time might not be right now. So hold on, it's coming, it's coming. But don't put too much on your plate, because when you have little kids, your most important thing is raising them well, getting principles instilled in their heart. It's, taking care of your home, taking care of your husband, making sure it's all running very smoothly. I didn't have anything on the side until my husband kind of encouraged me to, just so I could have my own outlet. But it was not until after almost a decade and a half of raising kids. So it wasn't until my oldest one was almost a teenager, or was a teenager, that I did. So, I encourage your girls, correct them, but don't go overboard. Have the punishment fit the crime. Just be careful about doling out punishments that are very extreme. You should have a baseline of, this is what happens, if you lie or you do this. And then they should be phasing out of punishments by the time they're teenagers. If you've been doing this for a while, obviously, if you get saved when your kids are teenagers, that's going to be a little bit different scenario. But I'm mainly talking to younger moms that are saved and they have younger kids. So definitely know that there's a goal. And the goal is to get to the point where you don't have to use physical discipline. That's the goal. So that should be phasing out by the time they're 10, 11, 12. Probably for my kids, most of the time by the time they're like 7, 8, 9, 10, it's kind of starting to phase out. So they still need correction, even as a teenager. But I found that with my teenagers, oftentimes it's easy to give a lecture and they straighten up. I can guide them with my eye when they are teenagers, whereas when they're younger, they might need a little bit more reinforcement. So, nose itches. Tell them they're special because God made them and He loves them. And like I said, this is something I do from the time my kids are real little. I'm constantly telling them this, getting it in their head, getting it in their heart. And then make them expect things out of their future spouse. Teach them that they don't need to go for the first guy that comes along. Teach them that it's okay to take your time to get to know them. Teach them to watch out for those red flags. Teach them that it's totally fine to expect them to provide for them. Home, shelter, a job. Don't let your girls go for some guy that doesn't even have a job, that's not employed, that's just sitting around playing video games. Huge red flags. Have them have some expectations. Teach them that they're worth having a husband who does all these things. They're worth being sought after. My husband jokes all the time about how our girls are so precious to him and they're worth a lot. He said, in one way, we don't make the guy pay a dowry anymore. In one way, that makes it, he doesn't even like that because it makes it look like his daughter is worth some amount of money and they're not. So, in one way, but in the other way, they are so precious. He kind of wants the guy to like have to work for them a lot. And so the whole dowry thing, it kind of showed that, a man was willing to put some investment into the wife that he was getting. So, girls are just, we're raising girls that are just too easy. They feel like they don't have a lot of worth, a lot of self-worth. And so they'll just go for the first guy that comes along. And this comes to providing a good home where your daughters, it's going to take a really special guy to get your daughters to leave because they're so happy in the home, right? Because they're so well protected. And so because they're so loved and because their home is so peaceful and their home's such a good place to live in, that it's going to take a really special guy to come along and win them. It's not going to be just any guy. It's not going to be a guy who treats them like dirt. It's going to be a guy who treats them better than their dad. And if you have my husband as your dad, that's a tall order because my girls are very close to their dad. And it's going to be a tall order for a guy to come along and win one of my girls. So teach them that they can expect some things out of their future spouse. And I agree, Nicole. She said the catalyst to most of my problems was sadly daddy issues and self-worth. And that, unfortunately, daddy issues calls most of those in girls, which is why I spent a lot of time at the beginning talking about how it's so important. That relationship between your husband and your daughter is so important. And for those of you that have maybe you did divorce your husband before you were saved, okay, and you had children with him, I'm just going to put something out there. Don't demonize your husband to your daughter if he's just a normal guy, because that is very important that your daughter has a good relationship with her dad, even if he's unsaved, but he's still a decent man. That's definitely going to lay the foundation for future relationships with people of the opposite sex. So I can't stress that enough, how important that daddy-daughter relationship is. And then just making your daughters, letting them know that they're worth whoever they marry. They need to expect some things from them. They need to expect their future husband to love them and cherish them. They need to expect their future husband to never use physical force on them, to not call them derogatory names, to not use profanity towards them. So there are some things that they can expect. And when you raise a daughter with self-confidence and self-worth, and knowing that also, number one, her worth lies in Jesus Christ, and that she is very special to him, and she is very loved by him. She's very loved by her earthly father. She's very loved by her earthly mom. Then that's going to really, not like she has a heavenly mom, but you know what I mean? She's very loved by her earthly father, and she's very loved by her mom. That's going to really create a daughter that knows that she's special to the Lord, knows that she has people in her life watching out for her and looking out for her. And it's going to make her raise her standards a little bit for whoever comes along and wants to date her. So, that's some things we've done with our girls. So far, it's working. If we need to tweak it, we will as we, go through this whole journey. But so far, it is working. It is working. McMurtry girls know that they're special. They know that they're loved. They know that it's going to take someone special to win their hearts. And, that's how I want it to be, because my heart breaks for the girls who think that they have no self-worth, and they think it's okay to just go for a loser who's not going to take care of them, who's going to physically abuse them, who's going to, not provide for them. So I'm trying to raise my girls to just kind of that, not to even entertain a thought if someone comes along for them, which no one has, but that's how I'm trying to raise them. Anyway, so hopefully that was a help. We are experiencing a dearth of good men, but we're also experiencing a lack of girls who really know their worth. So if you are raising daughters, just instill in them a love for the Lord, instill in them a love for their parents. Let them know that you love them. Let them know that Jesus loves them. And that'll help with a lot of potential problems that pop up. So anyways, thanks guys for watching, and we will see you next week, Lord willing. Ooh, I don't know though. I might not see you next week. It's going to be crazy. Next week, I'm going to be picking up Fiona from the airport. She's flying in from Ireland. And then next Saturday is the wedding. And then the Monday after that, I go to camp. It's going to be crazy. The Monday after that, I go to camp. So if I don't get around to recording, I might try to pre-record some, and then I'll release it first for members. If you're not a member, check it out. You can be a member for 99 cents. Everything goes towards the blog, upkeep, and all that good stuff. Yes, wedding week is next week. So I don't know about next Monday though, because like I said, I'll be going to the airport and back. So if I get a chance to, I will try to pre-record a couple, because I really don't want to miss 2 weeks in a row, but it's a crazy couple weeks. So bear with me, and we'll try to make it happen. So forgive me if I seem scatterbrained. I have a lot on my mind right now. Life is busy, life is full, life is good, but go love the Lord this week. Go love your husband this week. Go love your kids this week. You are the best wife for your husband. You are the best mom for your children. And don't forget that. So we will see you guys, Lord willing, next week.